What's going on today, guys? First off, the pack was just robbed, man. We're gonna do some first I'm gonna try to get in this cigar. We're gonna do some fungicide talk today, mainly about tall fescue in the transition zone and what you're gonna encounter and what you should plan for. So stay tuned. I don't have a wire. Gotta improvise. I'll be back. Just water. Thought it would do something. I didn't know. Can look pretty interesting. All right. Well, I hope they're not coming to get me. I'll let that pass. Okay. I'm talking about tall fescue in the transition zone mainly. Up north and in other parts of the country, a lot of this isn't going to apply, and it's going to be different. I'm going to have different kinds of grasses, see different kinds of diseases. Like, for example, down here, I don't see things like red thread. And as far as in tall fescue, we don't see a lot of dollar spot. Dollar spot's not really a fescue thing. Where we can maybe see a little bit of it is in these fescue lawns that we've been seeding a little bit of bluegrass into all along. And there's some bluegrass in the stand. Bluegrass is susceptible to dollar spot, as well as perennial ryegrass. So if you live somewhere where you're putting a lot of perennial ryegrass into your fescue or bluegrass, you could see dollar spot, but not really an issue here. Mainly, we'll just start off at the beginning. The varieties you select matter. Cheap seed ain't good, and good seed ain't cheap. As I was saying in the other segment, I didn't like how it turned out where I was shooting before, but the varieties matter. This is the Triple Threat Plus here. That one is. This one straight in front of us is. The Triple Threat Plus is from Southern Seeds, and what it is the top performing varieties that come from the Pure Seed East test lab, and Dr. Frazier there at Pure Seed East does all kinds of things to improve the genetics on this grass, torture tested against drought, gray leaf spot, heat stress, everything, and brown patch. So we know we're starting with a good seed by selecting that. It's also got a 5% of Jumpstart Kentucky bluegrass in it, so it'll have some self-mending quality, so to speak, and the bluegrass helps it with the color some. I'm always confident going with the stuff from Pure Seed because I know that Dr. Frazier has put it through the torture test down there. And if you haven't seen the video I did with her out there at Pure Seed East, you need to check that out. It'll really open your eyes when you look at the test plots, and you'll see certain varieties, the little squares, where all around it was just decimated by gray leaf spot. Some little squares were unaffected. So the genetics make a difference in this. And I know that Pure Seed and Crystal Rose Fricker and Dr. Frazier and the whole gang out there are doing their best to bring you a quality product from start to finish. So don't start with a crummy seed or you'll get crummy results, but good seed matters. Usually by mid-May, we'll start seeing the favorable conditions for Rhizoctonia solani, and you'll start seeing it break out in the lawns pretty much all at once. Rhizoctonia solani kind of likes it, I don't know, like up to 85 when you're in the upper 60s at night. When that's consistent, there's a little humidity, you'll start seeing it break out. Then there's another form of Rhizoctonia that we'll see a lot here, and that's Rhizoctonia zea. And to look at what it's doing to the plant, or the symptoms, looks the same. And most fungicides will get it just like it will Rhizoctonia salami, so you don't have to worry about it. But you'll start seeing Zea more when you're steady in the 90s and upper 70s, even 80s at night, high humidity. You'll see Zea. You know, with brown patch, we're not really, you know, from May 15th till, you know, the middle of September, you're not just in constant high pressure threat for developing brown patch. It kind of will ebb and flow. There's charts and such out there you can look up for your area that will kind of show you a model of what you're dealing with, as far as when you're up, you're in the you know, there'll be a baseline, and you'll actually dip below that several times during the season. So when it's dipping below, your turf will be recovering. So what's important about that is you want your turf well fed. The old school of thought, you know, this, it's good that we're constantly learning, and I'm constantly learning. The people who research stuff are constantly figuring out new stuff. That's why they're researching it, folks. But we're changing thoughts and changing attitudes, changing approaches. Butler and Kearns have got a great paper out from NC State showing that now that they're in favor of summertime applications of nitrogen on tall fescue in the transition zone at moderate rates. To me, the fescue lawns that I have pumped up on a pretty vigorous program, we're talking 6 to 7 pounds of nitrogen a year. You know, well, we'll say 4.5 to 7 pounds a year on most of mine that I got in full program, and they are performing way better. They're lush, but they're not. I mean, you know, we're not seeing brown patch developing. We are running preventive on them, but we're not seeing issues and turf hitting stress and things like that. So it's a good deal. But the paper from NC State basically says that they're now seeing that you got to feed the fescue all through the summer, and don't get crazy with the rates. You do some moderate rates of nitrogen. Half pound would probably be as much as I would put on it at one shot with a slow release product, a primarily slow release product. It doesn't have to be all slow release. But for example, I just picked up a whole bunch of new fescue yards that another company was treating. And they also, well, not all of them, but some of them seemed kind of anemic to me and had brown patch. And so what I did was I went ahead and treated them with full rate of azoxystrobin, and the ones that the color wasn't good, the stands were kind of thin, I went ahead and hit them with a half pound of nitrogen and a quarter pound of potassium. And within about 7 to 8 days, 10 days, somewhere in that range, they were completely recovered, and those brown patch spots out in the lawn were filled in and recovered. So great success. So I wouldn't be afraid to get up to a pound in over the summer even, but just do it with a slow release, time it out right, and I think you'll see good results from that. And you know, most folks are fine at 4 to 5 pounds, 3 to 5 pounds of nitrogen per year on their fescue. I think you'll have a satisfactory lawn for them, but we're always pushing the envelope here at PPC Total Turf Labs. So fertility throughout the summer is going to be your first line of defense is going to be selecting good seed, then proper fertility. So you're moving along, you're doing yourself good things there. And a lot that I'm noticing too with all these new customers, I forget these things as I've kept customers for a long time, or just get a couple at a time and just don't think about it. But I picked up a big group of them, and I'm seeing the same thing in a bunch of them. So apparently it's pretty common. Improper use of the irrigation. I'll tell you what I deem as proper, and that is running long cycles in the morning, not in the evening, running long cycles, getting a deep watering in infrequently. So, in an ideal world, if I could stand there and manage the irrigation, I would run it for as long as I could till I started seeing runoff, and then cut it off and not crank it back up again till I see a little bit of wilt in the grass. And I mean, that could be a week, it could be the next day, and it could vary from yard to yard and area to area depending on sun exposure, that kind of thing. But for now, what I've done with most of the new customers, I've given them a little homework. A lot of them were saying something like, I'm running my irrigation 10 minutes a day every day at 6 o'clock in the evening. It's exactly what I do not want to hear. First off, I have to ask them, well, I mean, how much you think you're putting down in 10 minutes? So, okay, well, we got to test it. So I tell them to get a cat food can, tuna can, a little Tupperware bowl, something, put it out in the yard, run the irrigation, and let me know how much they got in 10 minutes. The first day I signed homework, I got back about 3 pictures of a pan with basically nothing in it. So 10 minutes won't do a squat, just as I expected. All that running it for 10 minutes every day was doing at night was wetting the leaves for one, and so the leaves were staying wet all night, and that was inviting brown patch, and just getting a tiny bit of water into the surface. And so where are the roots going to be? In the surface, that tiny little bit of water. So we got to bump those times up, and what I told them I wanted to see to start with, and we'll sort it out later, but I want them to put the can out there, run the thing long enough to collect about 1/4 of an inch, and do that 3 times a week. Run it long enough to get 1/4 of an inch 3 times a week in the morning, during the kind of weather we're having now, this hot weather. I'd like to see the fescue get about 1 inch of water a week, close to it. And when it gets hotter and drier, I mean, it could need up to 2 inches to stay looking, top notch. But we're moving up in the world from the 10 minutes every day to like a 45-minute cycle on each zone, and adjusting zones out to where you don't have areas that are sloppy, and because it's going to be different. Anyway, enough about irrigation. So water deep and infrequently is what you want your irrigation setup like. So now we've selected proper seed, we got our fertility bumped up, we're running our water right. So what's next? Usually in about mid-May, we'll start on our preventative fungicide treatments. And for brown patch, good fungicides are things like propiconazole and azoxystrobin. So the first round in May, I ran a straight DMI, like azoxystrobin, on all the lawns at full rate. Then came back the next month and ran some of them. I mixed a low rate of propiconazole with a low rate of azoxystrobin and ran it like that. And some of them I just ran the full rate of azoxystrobin on them. The mix thing is we call that homemade Headway. Headway's a great product, and this kind of mimics it. So we'll do that, and it works fine. But coming back for this July round, we're going to need something else in there. I'm already starting to see it's almost July now, and I'm already starting to see some gray leaf spotting stuff. Azoxystrobin and propiconazole not so great on gray leaf spot, so we're going to move to thiophanate methyl, or you might notice the Clary's 3336. So we're going to add that in with azoxystrobin on the July and August rounds. I'm not sure on what rates I'm going to use yet. I'm going to toy with that some. I'm probably going to run full rate of both. I don't know, or I might. They have a synergistic effect. The group 3s and the group 11s do. When you're running them together, they make a full rate at the half rate together. So we'll try something like that, and that would definitely be more cost effective. But I'm really scared of gray leaf spot eating these yards, and it will eat one. Last year in about probably toward the end of July, we started seeing symptoms in some of the yards. I mistook it for Pythium in some of them, so I treated for Pythium. It didn't do anything, and within weeks the whole stand was just melted out. And I'll put up some pictures of what gray leaf spot looks like on the blade and in the stand right here, so check this out. So hopefully the claries or the thiophanate methyl will thiophanate. I don't know, but anyway, hopefully that will help us out with our gray leaf spot issues this year. And in North Carolina, they were especially bad. And I feel like we've got a much better handle on treating brown patch than we do gray leaf spot at this point. So I'll report back at the end of the year and we'll see how we did. I don't feel like we're losing entire yards to brown patch, but the gray leaf spot ate some yards last year. I mean, there wasn't no grass left. And that pretty much sucked. I thought I was fired. Alternating modes are combining modes that, by the FRAC code on the label. Some will say 311, things like that. And that'll tell you what the mode of action is, and you'll know to alternate them or combine them. Going into the end of the summer here, I wouldn't run the straight thiophanate methyl because it is ineffective on Rhizoctonia zea. And in August, you're probably going to be seeing the gray leaf spot in my area anyway. And so you'll need that thiophanate methyl, the Clarius 30, which let's just call it Clarius 3336. It's much easier to say. So you'll need the Clarius 3336, but it will not be effective at all against Rhizoctonia zea. So your brown patch could flare up because you're more than likely going to have those favorable temperatures for it at that point. Those 90s and upper 70s and 80s at night. So you're not going to want to run that as your straight fungicide, but it's going to help you with the gray leaf spot. So you're going to want to combine something like azoxystrobin with it to help you out. And I suppose you could combine the propiconazole with it, but they're both basically the same mode of action. So I think you'll be better off combining it with the azoxystrobin on these later rounds. Or we just call azoxystrobin heritage. That's much easier to say. Heritage. I don't see a lot of Pythium, but if you deal with Pythium, if I do see Pythium, it's in the fall on newly. Here we go again. In the fall on seeded yards that have just come up and been watering the hell out of them. I'll see some Pythium then. Not so much during the year. Anyway, so if you do have Pythium issues, a lot of the guys suggest running a phosphite. Subvert has one out, so there's a plug for Subvert. Get you some phosphites out there to help you prevent Pythium. If you get Pythium, the way to see it in the stand is it kind of runs along where water might go or low areas, and it's a root rot. So generally you can go and grab that affected looking turf and it'll just come right up. So roots are gone. So if you get Pythium, you're going to want to treat that with something like Subdue Max, and that's methanoxin. So there's my Pythium talk. It's piffy. So again, we want to either combine or alternate those modes of action. Some say it's not as important when you're going after brown patch to alternate them. You can get away with running something like azoxystrobin back to back. Because of the life cycle of the actual rhizoctonia. There's favorable conditions and then unfavorable conditions. So it peaks and valleys, and so the disease is dying off, coming back, or life cycling, so to speak, I guess is the better way to put it. But I still would recommend, because of your other funguses and just because the label says so, try to alternate or combine as much as possible. So there you go, a little fungicide talk. Hope you got something out of it. But anyway, that's kind of the program we're going to run this year, and I feel like we'll be successful in most cases of it with it. But this whole thing with fescue is a process, and it starts from the very beginning, because like I said, we want to select our good seeds that are genetically bred to be stronger in these conditions, to resist disease, resist drought and heat stress, and then pump that fertility up all year long to drive those roots. And there's other things you can do along the way to put different nutrients into the plant to make them more stress tolerant, and this, all of this is just a process that's going to help. And then alternate those modes and know what pathogens you're probably going to be looking at certain times of the year, and what products you'll need to go after them. So I hope I got all of that in there, and good luck out there. And we'll see you next time. Thanks. There's some classic brown patch damage.